The last 40 years have seen significant changes in the way we live our lives. Our family life today is almost a sci-fi dream compared to domestic life in the 1970s. But it's that decade that saw some seismic changes in how we shopped and the breadth of products that became available to us, which laid the foundations for our digital futures.
In the 1970s, Britain was still sort of coming to terms with post-war austerity, I think, and we were still sort of coming out of really hard times. But of course it was a glimmer of a new dawn, and people were starting to enjoy things like appliances much more readily around the house. So technologies that were making life a lot easier, but also things that were making life a lot more fun. People also wanted things in a much more immediate way, as this sort of convenience living sort of gained a lot of ground. So people would want to, if they went and looked at some furniture in a showroom or any kind of appliance for the home, they wanted to take it home there and then. There's a famous quote about somebody wanting to go and shop for a chair, take it home and watch Match of the Day in it after they'd bought it on a Saturday afternoon. And of course that wasn't something that people had been able to do earlier in the 20th century. You went to a shop, you chose what you liked from the showroom, then you had to order it and you had to wait for it. So this kind of immediate gratification was really starting to gain a lot of momentum as well.
Back then, we were still a fair way away from the digital luxuries we enjoy today. However, colour TV started appearing in our households, and some 12 million would be in use by the end of the decade. And the mobile phone was still just an idea in development, when you consider only half the population had a landline in their house, let alone a phone that you could carry around.
Well, the advent of things becoming portable did start in the 1980s, and I think that's really set the precedent for how much we demand that kind of thing today. So the advent of the mobile phone, the technology didn't really lend itself to a mobile phone particularly well because it was a huge thing like a brick. But actually the demand for wanting that flexibility was obviously very strong. You can have a home computer or you can have a games console for the first time, and these things were big fun, and of course people wanted them. I think in the 1990s technology had expanded to the extent that perhaps we recognise it today. So massive amounts of goods are being manufactured, and that was even more so than it had been in the 80s. And that covered everything from technology to your home furnishings. You could afford to, every 5 years or every 10 years, get rid of your sofa, your curtains, your carpet, and get everything over again. A bit like changing your wardrobe with the fashion. And this is something, of course, which would have been totally alien to people in the 70s. Well, the dawn of the digital age, of course, has meant everything has been smaller and more portable ever since. So if you want to listen to music, you are much more likely to stick your MP3 player, stick that into a dock. All you need is a small pair of speakers and you're sorted. So those kind of things are taking up a lot less room than the old stacking stereo system of the 1980s with a twin cassette deck and a record player and a radio and everything else you need it to do. So those kind of things are becoming much more lightweight and much less visible in the house actually, which is a really interesting phenomenon.
40 years ago, there were no mobile phones, no game consoles, no iPads or tablets, and not only were there no flat-screen TVs, but most people were still watching in black and white. If we've come so far in just 40 years, with the rate of technological development speeding up all the time, what might the next 10 years look like? Recently, Argos, who are celebrating their 40th anniversary this year, worked with the Future Foundation to investigate how families might live in the coming years.
So the reason why we commissioned the report and the research is we want to stay at the forefront of what would be interesting and relevant products for our customers, because a big part of what we do is providing the right curation for our customers, so that in a world where you get bombarded with a variety of things, we want to make sure to offer things that are relevant and of quality for them and makes the life more convenient as well. So that's why we're looking at, as much as we're big right now on tablets and electronics and white goods and you name it, all the categories that Argos carries, I think we want to keep our eyes as well on the future, 3D printing being a big trend, smart appliances being a big trend as well. So we want to stay very close to that to understand.
Well, Future Foundation are tracking the major consumer trends that are having an impact on lives. So to mark their 40th anniversary, Argos approached us to look forward to the next 10 years and see what was going to have an impact. So we looked at things from demographic shifts to new technologies. So real variation between things like an aging population, to the boom in 3D printing, to devices having much more intelligent characteristics in the home. Well, Future Foundation have a bank of around 100 consumer trends, so really we just wanted to identify what was going to have the biggest impact on family lives. We also took a view as to what new emerging technologies are going to meet the consumer needs of the future, and therefore we could see them actually being in the home of the future in a common capacity.
Also, obviously, we want to stay on trend and understand what will make it easier for our customers to shop with us at many levels. And right now we're very strong in terms of click and reserve, but why not having a future where it would be click and print, for example? So in the context of 3D printing becoming pretty hot right now, we're looking at that space and what could we do to leverage those new technologies basically in the network of stores that we have as well, and obviously on the internet. That's one example. But at the same time, we are doing a few tests that are real right now in store. One of them is augmented reality. We have partnered with a player called Blipper, which has about 3 million downloads. A lot of them in the UK, and what we use it for is to transform the paper catalogue into a digital environment. So basically we're bringing paper to digital, and the way we use that is if you download the Blipper app, you have the catalogue in your hands, and let's say you blip. So you basically scan over a page which has a bunch of toys. As a kid, you would get to play the toys effectively into your handset, into your mobile. So you get a chance to experiment with it before deciding if you want to buy it. And if you want to buy it, you're one click away because you effectively end up being on Argos and you can buy it right away from that point of view.
I think the major breakthrough for the next 10 years is really just about how much smarter and how much more intuitive technology will become. So not necessarily about the devices themselves, but just how they behave. So although in the next 10 years your fridge or your coffee machine or your thermostat might not actually look any different to how it does now, it will be able to communicate with other devices in the home, alert you to things that are happening, and ultimately to be able to make decisions on your behalf.
So as our TVs get smarter and our homes are engineered to become more intuitive, it looks as though the 1970s sci-fi dream of how we might live in the future is likely to become a reality.